This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their taproom in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week, we're talking with Wild Barrel Brewing. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. So joining us today, we have Dr. Bill Sysak, co-founder and CEO of Wild Barrel Brewing in San Marcos, California. We're going to talk about all things Wild Barrel, from the brewery's founding to their barrel program, as well as beer pairings, of course, and Dr. Bill's expansive background in the craft beer industry. Dr. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We're enjoying one of your beers right now. We have Weisse Pog. I'm assuming Weisse is your Berliner Weisse series. Is that correct?
Correct. I wanted to make it simple for the American public because most people do not pronounce Berliner Weisse correctly. So we thought, let's make it simple. Weisse, V-I-C-E. And so we have a whole series of those fruited Kettle sours. We actually have 9 on at the brewery right now for to-go orders.
We're enjoying this one. This is delicious. You know,
It's good.
You talked about pronunciation. I'm going to jump here a little bit. I was watching a video interview you did. I forget who it was with, but you were talking about rock beer.
Yeah.
What is the correct? We've had that discussion.
I knew Tim was going to bring this up.
What is the correct pronunciation there?
It depends. Well, interestingly enough, it depends which part of Germany you're in.
Okay.
So the term that I've heard the most often when I lived in Nuremberg for a couple of years and went down to Bamberg quite frequently was Rauch beer, like that. So
Okay.
Rauch. But I've heard it with the soft C also. So I think you're both right.
Okay. That's because I was thinking like Reich, and we know the pronunciation there, so I assume, but that's interesting. I got the same answer when I asked about like Kvike. They said it's, there's dialects depending on where you are as to how that's pronounced. So,
Kvike.
Kvike or Kvike. Yeah.
Okay. So there, Brian, we have a solid answer on that finally.
Do we? Because it sounds like it could be both.
It's both. Everybody wins.
Yeah. Everybody wins. Everybody's a winner here.
Well, Bill, how has your week gone there? How are things out there at Wild Barrel?
Well, it's definitely been a change of pace. We've been able to adapt. We're positioned pretty well. So we're busy as far as takeout orders, doing correct social distancing and all the proper procedures. We're getting a lot of local home shipping deliveries, and then we're still brewing beer. We're still canning beer. We're just doing it at a slightly slower pace. But luckily, we can 4 to 5 beers every single month, so that we like to rotate through. So that works out for us because all the taps are turned off across the country, excepting for crowler and growler fills. So having canned or bottled product is the way to keep afloat right now.
We're doing
It's
our
key.
part here to try and get as much support of our local breweries. A lot of them said, hey, we had one brewery that just posted a thank you in a local forum. They're like, look, we really appreciate this. They're rehiring a few people, Brian. Monday Night Brewing, they had to furlough or lay off many of their employees. And they said, due to the popularity of the to-go beers, they're actually bringing, I think they said 4 of their employees are coming back. So
There's anecdotally, I've heard there's a few other breweries that are actually possibly doing better, at least to-go sales, than they did when they were just open normally, because people are incentivized to go out and go seek the beer out and, to support them. And it's the only way to get it now.
It's not rainbows and sunshine out there by any means,
Yeah.
but any piece of good news right now is really great. So
True.
yeah. Brian, what did you get into this week?
So it's, I was hitting the cellar again, the drink your cellar, hashtag drink your cellar.
Right.
So I got into a Sweetwater Sinner Sun from October of 2017. Still very tasty beer. Made the mistake of drinking that late at night. There's a lot of coffee in there. Hard to get to sleep after drinking that. So I found that out. Drank an old Founders Backwoods. I won't say the rest of it because this does go over the radio waves,
Yeah.
but from 2015, a St. Bernardus Abbot 12 Oak Age too, which I've had a couple of those, and this one was very tasty. I've had one before that wasn't as good. It was really nice. And, just a little bit of picking up some beers, Tim, just
Doing
running
your
out,
part,
supporting
local,
people.
right?
How about
Sure.
you, Tim? What'd you do?
The same, we actually did. So as I mentioned on last week's show, Brian, you and I are here in the studio together, and we feel fairly safe doing that because I have had the COVID-19 and I am on the recovered list. So I'm probably one of the safer people to be around. Right
You need
now.
one of those like verified check marks on Twitter.
The verified thing. That
Except
goes
it's
on
a
my
COVID.
shirt.
It's a COVID
Yeah,
thing instead of
yeah.
the blue thing. Yeah, you need
So-
one of those. Yeah.
But we hung out this weekend and we went down to Halfway Crooks Brewing, great little place down there, just doing some good drinking beers. And we picked up some stuff there. Dr. Bill, we got some Saisons. They do some nice Saisons down there. So we got
lovely. My favorite style.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got some Saisons and we picked up some Pilsners and was it one they called a top fermenting lager? Wasn't it?
Yeah, I think they call it
Yeah.
a top fermenting lager.
Dr. Bill, do you know anything about top fermenting lagers and what that indicates?
Well, it sounds like it's a hybrid beer. My theory and what I always educate everybody that I come in touch with about craft beer is that a beer is either an ale or lager. It can only be one or the other depending on the initial yeast used. But you can
Right.
lager top fermenting beer, right? And an ale at different temperatures. So, for example, you have a beer like Anchor Steam, which is a California Common, which is a lager beer, but it's done at the ambient cooler temperatures originally. So it was done as an ale fermentation temperature. So I'm guessing that's what they're doing. They're using a ale yeast and they're lagering it at a much colder temperature.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I would assume that the coldness would have some of the similar kind of characteristics. You're slowing down the yeast activity,
Yeah.
so they would
Makes
possibly
sense.
have
It's
a
good
similar
beer,
profile.
whatever it was.
It was
good
great.
beer,
It was
yeah.
tasty. Yeah.
And then, Brian, we did, like everybody using technology and video chat and that, we had a virtual bar night with some friends from our local farm, Reddit ATL Beer.
Yes, we did.
We got on Friday night, stayed up too late and drank too much, but that was a good
Yeah,
time.
that's right.
When you can't go out and hang out at the bar, even getting on the video screen and sharing some beers together is a pretty
Exactly.
good time.
Well, Tim, I think it's time for us to get in the beers of the week.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Well, Brian, as always, we have a great selection of beers to get into. One we actually picked up on our beer run, the Halfway Crooks Ada German Pilsner. We pre-gamed with that. We also had a vintage Pilgrim's Dole from New Holland, a wheat wine, underappreciated style, Brian.
I miss wheat wines a lot.
Well, that was delicious. From Wild Barrel, we do have the Weisse Pog that we're getting into right now. A Berliner Weisse Berliner Weisse. We just discussed this
We
with
did.
the pronunciation, didn't we, Dr. Bill? So we
Yes.
got the Berliner Weisse here with the Passion Orange Guava. That's very good. We also have their Prince of Dankness, which is a double dry hopped Dippa. We have a Weisse Nectarine Cherry. And we have Catch You on the Hazy Side, Northeast IPA, Brian. So we're going to get into all of those. So, Brian, what's
Sounds
happening
fantastic.
this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
All right, so the Brewers Association has released their 2019 Industry Growth Report. So the big headline is that the U.S. small and independent craft breweries held steady at nearly 4% growth in 2019. Craft brewers produced 26.3 million barrels, up from 25.5 million barrels in 2018. The independent craft beer share of the total beer market volume increased to 13.6% in 2019, up from 13% in 2018 and 12.5% in 2017, so still growing. The craft brewers employed more than 160,000 people directly, which is an increase of 7% over 2018. A total of 8,275 craft breweries operated at some point during 2019, though at any given time during the year, it may have been a little less than that, but that's the grand total of all of them. That breaks down to 2,085 microbreweries producing or less barrels annually, 3,011 brew pubs making beer mostly for on-site consumption, 2,966 brewery tap rooms, 240 regional craft breweries, so 942 breweries opened in 2019, and 294 breweries closed.
Some news, Brian. Keeping up with the stats. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon to talk with Wild Barrel Brewing.
As beer lovers, we know real beer, and Athletic Brewing makes non-alcoholic beer that stands shoulder to shoulder with full-strength craft beer. With a fraction of the calories and certified organic, it's a great beer to enjoy anytime. Check out Athletic's selection of IPAs, golden ales, stouts, and more at athleticbrewing.com. Use code BeerGuys25 for 25% off your first order, and U.S. customers get free nationwide shipping. Athletic Brewing, brew without compromise.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Well, I'm sure I'd feel much worse if I weren't under such heavy sedation.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand, so if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on all popular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to our talk with Wild Barrel Brewing.
Dr. Bill, we've moved on. We're actually getting hazy over here, and we're catching on the hazy side. And this one, we just talked about the hops, Galaxy and Citra in this one, correct?
Correct. Double dry hopped with Galaxy and Citra, about 3.5 pounds per barrel, which is a pretty good dose.
Yeah. Now, you know, something I wanted to ask you is a lot of the old school guys in beer have an aversion to the hazy IPAs. And we've seen, you know, different people that just, some just don't do it at all. Others are kind of like, hey, I'm going to brew it because it's popular, but I don't necessarily like it. But from what I've seen, you're on board as one of many styles, correct?
Correct. In San Diego especially, I think it's fiscally irresponsible not to be brewing popular styles. The culture has definitely shifted. We're more in a millennial-based beer drinking culture. So the days of guys coming in and wanting their 100 IBU beers are still there. But I think there's a lot more movement to flavor and taste. The backstory is no longer as relevant as it used to be. The whole story about beer and how it came about and this type of beer. It's all about flavor, which is a good thing. Millennials want that upfront experience. And so it's brought back a lot of artisanal products, bakeries, cheesemongers, butcher shops, things like that. And I think it's a good thing. I am a huge proponent of the Hazy IPA because even though a lot of my friends, my old school friends that I've known for 20 plus years that brew some of the greatest West Coast style and classic IPAs are not pro hazy, I tell them this isn't going anywhere. It's a gateway beer. It's always going to be there even when the shine comes off of it, because it's an easy transitional beer to get people drinking IPAs because it's got so low bitterness and such a wonderful hop and flavor aromatics. So it's just a delicious beer without the bite. And it's always going to be around to some degree or another, I believe.
It can kind of replace the standard like Blue Moon, the wit beer that a lot of people get started with. You can go right to an IPA, hazy IPA, and as long as you're not scared off by the initials IPA, you're good to go, right?
Yeah, I've got a great story about that. We have a big tasting room that my partners and I built that's got a lot of space, and we have a lot of parties and work parties and things like that go on. Of course, not now, but before the pandemic occurred. And we had a group of just everyday construction workers. And there was this one guy, he was about 50 years old, and he was really uncomfortable. You could tell because he was definitely a Schlitz beer drinker originally, and now he drank Budweiser. And we serve all of our beers, whether it's 4, 8, or 16 ounces, in a 17 and a half ounce snifter because it's just an appropriate glass for all styles of beer. And it allows you to swirl if you want to, and it's not a thin little shot glass for the 4 ounces. So it allows all the beautiful aromatics to come through. And he did not want to use that glass, and he saw nothing on our menu that even remotely came close to what he drank on a regular basis. We now do a great German Pils, but at the time we just had a Wit as kind of our gateway beer, and a half dozen hazies and 10 sours and 5 imperial stouts and things like that, right? So he was not having it. I thought, I'll hook him with our White Rabbit, which is a kind of, I always tell people it's a sexier Blue Moon, or it's a Blue Moon done right. And I also gave him a hazy, and he did not want to drink out of the glass, but he started trying both. And I thought for sure I was going to get him a glass of the White Rabbit. He goes, let me have this other one. And 15 minutes later, I looked over to where their party was, and I see him with the glass of the beer, and he's swirling it and sniffing it.
You hooked, got him.
That is what Hazy IPA is all about. As much as it's the line, standing in line at a brewery release and stuff like that is great, it's about the fact that that beer can convert you over from a BMC drinker, those beers that fluffy horses kick field goals at halftime of the Super Bowl, and they have Blue Mountains and stuff like that. So this is the beer that I think is going to stay around for a while out of the IPA spectrum.
We've seen that before, that some people, there's such a range in beer, and there's a lot of people who know beer. If they're not beer drinkers, they know beer as BMC beers. That's beer to them. There's no other flavor spectrum there. They may know Guinness, BMC and Guinness. That's beer. And, we did a show one time a couple of years ago with a sommelier, and we talked about beer for wine drinkers or wine for beer drinkers. There's a lot of crossover there. And I think it's something, you may have some exceptions to the rule. There may be some people that just don't like it at all. But if you enjoy alcoholic beverages of any kind, you can probably find a beer that's going to fit your palate.
It's very
diverse
beer.
Yeah.
It can match just about anything else out there. We've got beers made after cocktails,
Sure.
So,
and Dr. Bill, I do want to tell you that, as you said, that this 17-ounce glass is good if you want to swirl. Brian was lovingly staring into his glass, swirling it at that time.
Lovely. Beer's the most versatile beverage of any of them. You can pair it with anything, and it's got more complexity. And for example, one of our Weisse series is Black Currant. And the way we kind of set up the flavor profile is it's like the cepage of a Merlot Cabernet blend with a tannic finish, but still fruit forward. And so we hook red wine drinkers with that nonstop. We almost always, my wife only drinks red wine. She'll have a water or something. And I go, let me have her try this. And 90% of the time, they love it.
So you mentioned that you think that Northeast IPA is going to stay. And I'd have to say I agree with you. That's one that it may not be the number one style, but it's always going to be on menus. We're always going to see that option out there. You've been drinking beer for a long time, started at 15 doing tastings and pairing barley wines and peanut butter sandwiches, I believe. Yes,
that was my oh wow moment.
Let's see. So is there a beer style over these years that's really fell out of fashion that you'd love to see come back?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of them. Saison is one I'd love, even though it hasn't gone anywhere. It's something that's so versatile with the different methods you could make and the different flavor profiles. And basically that's the original kitchen sink beer where you can throw just about any herb or spice in it and do it. But a style that's really gone by the wayside, there's numerous of them, especially in the IPA category, is the black IPA or Cascadian IPA. It depends which coast you're on, what you're going to call it. I used to love Stone Sublimely Self-Righteous, and the only one I really liked more than that was readily available across the country was Wookie Jack. And the only reason why I liked it even more is because it had a little percentage of rye in it. And so that just gave it this wonderful feeling. You're getting all those great roasty notes from the dark grains, and then you're getting that hot bitterness come across. So it's a very fun, versatile beer for pairing. So I wish there were more black IPAs out there.
I'm really surprised that the Brut IPA didn't really last longer, because it seemed like a big hook to catch like the wine drinkers, the champagne drinkers. I'm a little surprised at how quickly that seems to have come and gone. Is it gone on the West Coast as well, or is it still kind of struggling to hold on there?
It's almost completely gone. There's a couple places up in the San Francisco area that are still doing it. But yeah, we did one. We went to the California Craft Beer Summit, I think 2 years ago. Yeah, that sounds right. And up in Sacramento, it was a half dozen great breweries that all submitted brutes. And I loved all of them. I liked ours, but of course, but I liked all of them a lot. And I think it's a really clean, dry style. And I think the reason why it didn't hang on is because it was a engineered beer done as a response to hazy IPAs, and there wasn't a groundswell of enthusiasm for it initially. It was kind of a backlash that brewers did to say, "Oh, you guys like hazy IPAs? We're going to do the exact opposite and make them a completely dry beer using amylase and just completely dry it out." And I think there just wasn't time to build a following for it, so it just fell out of favor.
See, I enjoyed them. I'll miss the Brut IPA. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Dr. Bill and Wild Barrel Brewing. Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
Is your brewery or restaurant flooring all jacked up? Your foundation needs to be protected from heat, chemicals, and other contaminants. At the same time, you want to make sure it's slip resistant and you can clean up your messes with soap and water. You know who to call?
ResTech.
We've been manufacturing poured-in-place flooring since 2002, and we've got solutions to fit any facility's needs. Go on and visit our website at
ResTech.net.
That's RES-TEK.net. Drop us a line and we will come to you for a free evaluation.
Oh, yeah. Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, WBQO 93.7 FM in Brunswick, Georgia. Catch Beer Guys Radio on WBQO every Sunday at 1 p.m. local time. Now let's get back to Dr. Bill Sysak with Wild Barrel Brewing.
Hey, guys.
We're on to another wild barrel beer here, Dr. Bill.
Yes.
Up on your recommendation, we're drinking through these as you recommended, and we've just got into the Weisse Nectarine Cherry, which is delicious. I've enjoyed all of these quite a lot. So we wanted to dive in and talk to you some about pairing. You've mentioned that you're a big fan of pairing, and that is not one of my strong suits. I wish that I knew more about pairing and the flavors and that. So do you have any advice for someone that maybe wants to start out? Are there any freshman steps to pairing beer and food?
Certainly. I teach a 6-week course of this at San Diego State University on the secrets of exceptional beer and food pairing. I've been doing it since the late 70s and have done it on multiple continents, many countries, and all over the place. So I'm pretty well known for my beer and food pairings, but beer is by far the most versatile of all the beverages. Although I do like to pair beer, whiskey, food, and cigars simultaneously. That's always a fun pairing. But beer is just so versatile. I'm talking about craft beer once again. It's got bitterness, which cuts through the richest fats and proteins like cheeses and chocolates and meats. It's got carbonation, which cleanses the palate. It's got sweetness to handle the hottest chili, and it's got roasted grains, which matches the Maillard reaction, a fancy chef term that is non-enzymatic browning of meats and breads, like when you're baking bread and it starts to brown and you smell it, or when you sear meat on a grill and you get those wonderful characteristics. And so it's very versatile. And if you really are a chili head, you can have something very bitter and hoppy, and it will actually accentuate in the right center of your palate, which is perfect, and yet calm the rest of your palate, which is very nice. So beer is versatile. So what you have to think about is what goes with food. What are the side dishes that go with food? And go ahead and try those. For example, if you like duck and you know that cherry sauce is a classic rendition of a duck dish, have a cherry beer with it. That will go beautifully. But it's really all about experimentation. And if you're starting out, the easiest things to do are, instead of going with a composed plate of, say, a steak and potatoes and vegetables, is try something that you can get multiple variations of. The most classic versions would be different cheeses or donuts or chocolates. I started doing beer and Girl Scout cookies about 15 years ago. Now it seems like everybody's doing it.
Another option is Doritos, the variations of Doritos.
Oh, there you go.
You said donuts. Yeah, right?
I do a beer and junk food pairing. I did it mainly to off Greg one time, because I used to do all these master pairing. That's my kind of philosophy title, master pairing series when I was with Stone. And I do this beer and junk food pairing. I've done it at Savor in Washington, D.C. I've done it at the California Craft Beer Conference. And it's beef jerky, pink snowballs, and Funyuns, and showing people that you can pair beer with anything. You go from a 7-course meal that's fabulous at a brewery or a restaurant, that's a great pairing. And then you get home, you want one more beer. All you got in your pantry are things like that. You can always find something that will go together with it. So it's very fun to get your friends over, get your favorite donuts shop, pick up a dozen donuts, have everybody bring different beers and quarter up the donuts and try them out. And it's just an amazing thing to try that, or cookies, or like you said, Doritos. You'll experience a lot of interesting flavor combinations, which is just the way to do it. So it's all about experimentation, remembering what you're doing, and just enjoying the process and having a good time.
You know, we have a pub here in Atlanta area, actually in Decatur, Georgia, called the Brick Store Pub. Really fantastic, world-class beer bar there. And they have a
well known.
Yes, yeah. They have a gentleman on their kitchen team there that is phenomenal at pairing, and he does beer and cheese pairings there. And he came out with us one time and did a beer and cheese pairing. And I tell you what, Dr. Bill, I've gone to beer dinners and I've done pairings in that, but I don't think I've ever had one that really showcased the contrast that you can have between, like he had us try the cheese by itself, and then try the cheese and take a sip of the beer, or take a sip of the beer and then take a bite of the cheese, and to see how much these can change the way these hit your palate.
Absolutely.
It was just amazing. I've never had anyone do a tasting like this with me before. And a question for you, he mentioned there that beer pairing is harder than wine pairing, because with wine, Chardonnay is going to be pretty similar across the board what a Chardonnay is. But when you talk IPA, there's just a huge range of flavors there. Do you find that beer is more difficult than wine, or are you into wine? That's one I haven't heard mentioned. Are you a wine drinker as well?
I am. I love the finest wines in the world, and I've had the opportunity to travel and try many of them. I'm a big Burgundy and Bordeaux person, but I love wines from all different regions. He's a chef, correct?
He is, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So here's what chefs do. And I love chefs. They're artists. They're very creative. They create a dish, and then they actually, around a different wine, usually they try a wine or they know a wine, and they create a dish going off those flavor profiles. Beer is much more versatile. Matter of fact, I've done 27, I think it is. I always forget the number. Beer versus wine dinners. And usually it's in enemy territory, as I say, where it's a wine culture. And I've only lost twice. And usually it's because they go, that pairing was amazing, Dr. Bill, but I really love that Pinot Noir, right?
Oh, okay.
Beer has so many things going over better for it than wine when it comes to pairing. For example, carbonation. Only 3% of all the wines of the world are carbonated or sparkling. And so that handicaps them slightly. As much as I love wine, I like to enjoy wine with cheese, but beer with cheese is much more versatile. And so the methodology that I promote is let the chef be as creative as they want to. Let them make whatever they're going to make. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had a chef change a dish last minute because some fresh ingredient became available to them, which is great, but it could throw off a pairing. So I like to let them make the dishes and then bring a quiver full of different beers, and have beers that I know will pair perfectly with the dish, but have beers off to the left and the right. I used to do something at Stone where it was Adam Avery would come out for his birthday, the founder of Avery Brewing, and he had his barrel aged series, the gold foil series. And being over the top Dr. Bill pairing, we do like a 7-course dinner with 14 barrel aged beers. And we'd always have the chefs make them in advance, and we try this broad spectrum of his beers. So you might be doing one with an imperial stout made with coffee, that's 15%, and you might be doing another one with 8% red wine barrels and very sour for the same dish. And it just shows the versatility of it. Matter of fact, in the wine culture, they consider contrast and comparison as a very common terms because they have to, because they're very limited on what they can do. It's hard to have spicy food with a lot of wines. You've always hear about asparagus and wine and how it doesn't work. Well, you can have a great Roussanne, which is a single varietal grape that's used in a lot of blends that will go great with asparagus. But how many people have a 100% Roussanne on their wine menu, right? So it's one of those things where they're much more handicapped, and the versatility of having beer in a pairing versus wine. For example, try to give you a real quick example. I know I tell long stories about different things.
We're loving it.
Go on.
If I told you guys, if you guys were both chefs and I said, make me a Wagyu sirloin, a parsnip puree, sauteed greens, and a red wine reduction, I'm going to give you both credit for cooking me rare, mid-rare, which is how I like it. But one of you may just use salt and pepper. One of you may use Cajun spices. Parsnip puree is probably the same, but you could use different wines for the reduction. Maybe use the Zinfandel, maybe use the Petit Syrah, which is going to influence that. And then what happens is you've got the sauteed greens. So you have these sauteed greens, and one of you may do it with some spinach with butter and garlic, and one of you may do mustard greens with red pepper flakes, right? And a little bit of olive oil. And so naturally, I would say any type of dark or brown beer that's not overly high ABV would go great with the steak, the Maillard reaction, right? So a brown ale, a black IPA, a Dunkel, a Rauch beer would all go fabulously with that steak. But then when I'm trying the mustard greens, red pepper flakes, I'm going, oh, it's the black IPA all the way, because it changes the whole profile. I'm not only getting the Maillard reaction from the roasted grains, now I'm getting the bitterness from the IPA, which is being accentuating the greens because of the heat from the red pepper flakes and the chilies. So you have such a broad spectrum and a range. I always tell everybody there's not a food item in the world, and people have tried to stump me, that I cannot pair with a beer. And that means with a little bit of practice and a little bit of fun, you can do the same thing, and you can find a beer that will pair perfectly with that pairing.
Good stuff. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon to talk more with Dr. Bill of Wild Barrel Brewing.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
As a brewery owner or taproom manager, are you looking for ways to enhance your customer experience while maximizing your revenues? Craft Cellar is a mobile solution that helps your brewery drive sales and attract new customers through online pre-sales for beer releases, events, and memberships. Get details now at craftcellar.com. Mention Beer Guys Radio after sign up and extend your free trial to a full 30 days. Remember, craftcellar.com, craftcellr.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag, commercial-free episodes, and even bonus episodes that aren't available anywhere else. Now let's get back to our talk with Dr. Bill Sysak with Wild Barrel Brewing.
Hey, guys.
We are going to talk more about Wild Barrel. We've talked about a lot of the cool stuff in the beer industry, all the bottle shares and pairings and all that. But we want to talk a little bit more about your brewery. We actually just opened a beer, your Prince of Dankness here, with this cool skull with it looks like hopcone dreadlocks.
Hopcone dreadlocks.
Hopcone dreadlocks, Prince of Dankness, baby.
There we go.
That's my favorite beer that we do. It's kind of been my baby. I've been a proponent of that all along. It's 8.4% done with Nelson, Simcoe, and Motueka. I wanted that big dank characteristic. The Motueka adds a little light tropical notes, but it's got that, dare I say, some off-putting aromas and flavors to some people. Earthy, onion, garlicky, catty, maybe some diesel notes, a little Sauvignon Blanc. And it's just this nice, intense 8.4, 85 IBU West Coast double IPA. I wanted it to kind of have the effect of Pliny the Elder. When a lot of people who have been drinking IPA recently try Pliny the Elder, they go, I don't know what the big deal of it is. Well, it's because Pliny the Elder is so balanced and yet so hoppy. It satisfies the most extreme lupomaniac, but yet it's something that's fairly approachable. I think this is one of my favorite batches of Prince of Dankness that we've done, and it's been with us since we started in late September 2017.
And whether people realize it or not, whether these new young kids coming into the beer scene realize it or not, Pliny is still a phenomenal beer.
It is.
Even if it's not the trendiest, style right now, it's just such a great beer, especially when you get it super fresh. Still, if you haven't had Pliny the Elder fresh, you owe it to yourself to try it out sometime. Any beer geek does, sure enough.
There's a reason why they call Vinny the Hop Father. I mean, I've watched the progression of IPAs ever since they were revived in the early 80s. And I have a hierarchy of the greatest IPA producers, which have probably changed slightly with a lot of these newer, younger guys that have been going for the last 5-10 years that are just doing amazing IPAs. But Vinny's always been at the top with the range of IPAs that he's done. And he's just amazing knowledge when it comes to that.
So I have to ask you, with your customers, which is the more popular of the two? Are they going for the IPAs, either the more dank ones or the New England, or are they go with the fruited Berliners?
Well, it's funny. They're both extremely popular. They the fruited Berliners and the hazy IPAs, I should say. We have 30 beers, 28 to 30 beers usually on tap. And we move through them all. And, we have a great wit and a German Pils, and we have a coffee milk stout that we love. But then we get into IPAs, and we usually have 5 to 7 hazies. We have a couple West Coast that we do, Prince of Dankness being one of them. And then we have usually 3 or 4 pastry stouts, maybe an old ale. We have a few of Preston, our barrel masters, barrel-aged beers on, a couple stouts currently, and a sour that he has. And then we have a dozen, anywhere from 8 to a dozen Weisse beers. And these Weisse beers, we cannot keep them on. We do 8-barrel batches of them, and we do 60-barrel batches of them and split them. And we're just constantly rotating through them, and they're by far the most popular beers we do.
So I have to ask about your barrel program. We teased it up front, and how is that coming along?
It's coming along. It's Preston Wiesner's our barrel master. He has a pedigree of really revitalizing and making a broad spectrum of beers at Cascade Brewing in Portland. And he's comes down monthly, and he's very methodical with his processes, and he makes wonderfully crafted sour ales, which we're just now starting to come to light and see them come out and starting to be introduced. And over the next 6 months, once we get back up and running full steam, we're going to see a lot of them come out. Very limited quantities, 1, 2, 3-barrel blends that are working their way out into the public, and I'm sure we'll start being seen at some of your better beer stores and better beer shares, hopefully. And he's got some beautiful bourbon barrel aged and rye barrel aged and different types of imperial stouts that are coming along too. So, one of the unique things that's really shifted recently is pastry stouts have become fabulous. That's why we do a lot of pastry stouts. And Preston's an old school guy. And so he still believes, and I do too, but I just, from a marketing point of view, you have to look at it like beers like Eclipse 50/50s and things like that. I know you had a good friend of mine, Alicia Barr, on just recently.
Yep.
I didn't get to listen to the interview. It was one of the ones I earmarked to check out, though. It used to be that's all you needed was those type of beers that were done by different barrels. And now it's much more popular to have vanilla maple chocolate pastry stout that never even sees the barrel. And so it's one of those things where the barrel aspect has become less important, sadly, in a lot of people's minds. But it still adds so much elegance and character to the beer, and great vanilla and coconut notes if it's a bourbon barrel, for example. And so they're not going away, and they're going to continue to be fabulous. But once again, it's that thing where people have to realize it takes a lot to make one of those versus putting some delicious adjuncts in an imperial stout and putting it in your glass.
I'm equal opportunity. I love them both.
Me too.
Yeah.
Give me a good one. I've had some nice, we're actually next week's guest, Off Color Brewing. They do Dino S'mores, which is phenomenal beer. But to get a good, deep bourbon barrel aged stout is so nice.
I love the purity or impurity of a well done barrel aged stout.
Sure.
Just the barrel, just the stout. Love that.
Sure. Pastry stouts have something, they're that newer niche trend, which is important to follow. We do it drives my partners crazy because I insist that all the non-barrel aged beers be called hipster stouts, right?
The hipster stouts, sure.
The full name is actually, sorry, we're out of avocado toast, try our hipster stout, man bun approved. But we do it lovingly, and we have a whole series. We've probably in 2.5 years done 30 to 34 different variations of our pastry stouts. And really, we haven't canned or bottled any because we're saving the bottle program for basically our wonderful bourbon barrel aged beers that Preston's going to do. And we have canned one of them, and we're thinking of doing some more of that. But yeah, we just love them for pub only releases, and people come in and go, oh my God, they have 4 or 5 different imperial stouts. Perfect. I'm in heaven.
We've talked a lot about several different beer styles here, barrel aged, the kettle sours here and all this. And by the way, Dr. Bill, I love the sour level on your Berliners on Weisse here. I really enjoy just a nice tartness. I don't want something that's knocking my teeth out or anything like that. Give me a little tartness. I can take a straight Berliner, but I do like the fruited ones a lot. And we've talked about this. There's only one beer style that I am not, as kind of a blanket statement, 95% of the time not a fan of, and that is the West Coast IPA. Not really my cup of tea. Is there any beer style that you do not care for?
Other than light American adjunct lager.
Okay. All right.
That qualifies. But
and being a historian, things drive me crazy. Like there's a big trend in San Diego for Mexican lagers, right? Well, a Mexican lager is a Vienna lager. I'm sorry. Austrians were the beer culture of Mexico, just like the Germans were here, and they brought Vienna lagers. That's why there's great beers like traditional beers like Negra Modelo, Dos Equis, Noche Bueno, things like that. And it just drives me crazy that everybody thinks a Mexican lager is a Corona Pacifico. They think it's a pale Pilsner lager, which it's not. But I guess in a way they have an argument because it's the best-selling beers coming from Mexico and in Mexico. So I'm just more of a purist.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Bill. If people want to keep up with what's going on with the Wild Barrel Brewing, where should they go?
Well, you can go on our website, wildbarrelbrewing.com, or you can go on our Instagram, Wild Barrel Brewing, Facebook at Wild Barrel Brewing, or Twitter at Wild Barrel Brew. They'd only allow so many letters.
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. Bill. We appreciate it. And that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week as we will be talking with Off Color Brewing. For more craft beer info, follow us online. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.